The first thing you have to understand is that my entire life was a series of carefully laid bricks, each one placed with the singular purpose of building a better future for my son Alex. I wasn't born into a world of comfort or opportunity. I was born in a gritty, working-class neighborhood in Cleveland where the sky was often the color of steel and dreams were a luxury we couldn't afford. My parents worked at the local auto plant, their hands permanently stained with grease, their backs bent from decades of labor. They taught me the value of a dollar, the ache of a long day, and the quiet dignity of providing for your own. I carried those lessons with me like a shield. When I had Alex, I looked into his tiny, trusting face and swore he would have more. He would have everything. That promise became my life's engine. I worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3. I was a waitress by day, the smell of coffee and burnt toast clinging to my clothes. At night I cleaned office buildings, the silence of the empty corridors my only companion as I scrubbed floors and emptied trash cans, my thoughts always on Alex. Every dollar I earned was split, a portion for our cramped apartment and meager bills, and the rest squirreled away into a savings account that bore his name. I missed school plays and soccer games, not because I didn't care, but because my presence at work was the only way to pay for the cleats he wore and the field trips he so eagerly awaited. I patched his jeans, cooked his meals from scratch to save money, and read to him every night, my voice hoarse from exhaustion, hoping to fill his mind with stories of worlds he might one day see. The sacrifices felt like investments. When he got into Ohio State University, a wave of pride so powerful washed over me that it nearly brought me to my knees. It was the culmination of everything I'd worked for. I liquidated a part of my meager retirement savings without a second thought to help with his tuition, telling him it was just some extra money I had lying around. I didn't want him to feel the weight of my sacrifice. I only wanted him to feel the lift of its wings. He graduated with a business degree, his future gleaming as brightly as the polished stage he walked across to receive his diploma. I sat in the audience, a face in the crowd, tears streaming down my cheeks, feeling a sense of accomplishment so profound it was almost holy. My boy had made it. We had made it. He landed a good job at a marketing firm in Columbus, and soon after he met Sarah. The first time he brought her home to my little apartment, I was a bundle of nerves. Sarah was polished. She came from a family with money, the kind of quiet, old wealth that whispers rather than shouts. Her clothes were elegant, her nails perfectly manicured, and she had a way of speaking that was both articulate and, to my ears, a little intimidating. But she was kind to me, complimenting my home, which I'd spent a week scrubbing, and praising my cooking. Alex looked at her with an adoration that made my heart ache with happiness for him. He was building his own life, his own family, and I was so proud of the man he was becoming. When they announced their engagement, I was the first person they told. We sat in my small living room, the same one where I'd once rocked him as a baby, and he held Sarah's hand, a brilliant diamond sparkling on her finger. "We're getting married, Mom," he said, his voice thick with emotion. I hugged them both, my joy pure and unadulterated. This was it, the final, most beautiful brick in the foundation I had built for him. Of course I offered to help. I knew Sarah's parents, the Gibsons, would be covering a significant portion of the wedding costs, but I needed to contribute. It was important to me. I wanted to stand beside them, not as a charity case, but as a parent, a provider. I insisted on paying for the rehearsal dinner and the flowers, a cost that made my bank account cry out in protest, but I silenced it. This was for Alex. Then I decided to do something more. I wanted to give them a gift that would truly signify my love, something they would remember forever. For years I had kept a separate account, my rainy day fund that had slowly, painstakingly grown. It was my safety net, the one thing that stood between me and destitution in my old age. I looked at the balance, the result of decades of skipped lunches and worn-out shoes, and made a decision. I took them out to dinner, at a nice Italian restaurant downtown, and after the tiramisu arrived, I slid an envelope across the table. "What's this, Mom?" Alex asked, looking puzzled. "Open it," I urged. my heart thrumming with anticipation. Inside was a brochure for a 5-star, over-the-water bungalow in Bora Bora and a confirmation letter. "It's your honeymoon," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "A full 2 weeks. Everything is paid for. Flights, accommodations, everything. It's my wedding gift to you both." Sarah's jaw dropped. She looked from the brochure to me, her eyes wide. "Helen, this is over $20,000. You only get one honeymoon," I said, beaming. "It should be the trip of a lifetime." Alex stood up and wrapped me in a hug so tight it squeezed the air from my lungs. "Mom, thank you. I don't know what to say. This is incredible." He pulled back, his eyes shining. "We're going to be a real family now, all of us, a real family." Those words were the sweetest music I had ever heard. In that moment, sitting in that warm, candlelit restaurant, I felt a sense of completion. The struggles, the loneliness, the endless grinding work, it had all been worth it. I had given my son the world, and now I was being welcomed into his. The future felt as bright and promising as the brochure in his hands. I saw holidays spent together, future grandchildren bouncing on my knee, a home filled with the laughter and love I had always dreamed of. I had no idea how quickly that dream, built over a lifetime, was about to be bulldozed into rubble. The week leading up to the wedding was a whirlwind of last-minute preparations and palpable excitement. The air in Columbus seemed to buzz with Alex and Sarah's happiness. I played my part, shuttling floral arrangements, picking up relatives from the airport, and offering a steady, reassuring presence amidst the chaos. My role was small but essential, and I cherished it. I felt needed, included. The Gibsons, Sarah's parents, were perfectly cordial. Mr. Gibson, a stern-looking man who was a partner at a law firm, would give me a curt nod. Mrs. Gibson, always impeccably dressed, would offer a polite, thin-lipped smile. They were a different breed, operating in a world of country clubs and European vacations that was entirely foreign to me, but I didn't mind. Love, I believed, could bridge any gap. The rehearsal dinner was my contribution, held at a sophisticated restaurant downtown with panoramic views of the city skyline. I'd chosen the venue carefully, wanting everything to be perfect. The room was filled with the soft glow of fairy lights, the tables adorned with the expensive white roses I had paid for. Laughter and conversation filled the air as the two families began to mingle. I moved through the room, a quiet hostess, making sure everyone's glass was full, my heart swelling with a quiet pride. This was my doing. I was helping to launch my son's new life in style. I found myself seated at a large round table with the Gibsons, a few of their close family friends, and of course Alex and Sarah. I was acutely aware of my simple off-the-rack dress next to Mrs. Gibson's designer silk. I felt a familiar pang of insecurity, but I pushed it down, focusing on Alex. He was radiant, throwing his head back in laughter at something Mr. Gibson said, one arm draped possessively around Sarah's chair. He looked like he belonged there, in that world of effortless affluence. And I had helped put him there. That thought was my comfort. The conversation flowed around me, mostly about topics I couldn't contribute to: stock portfolios, summer homes in the Hamptons, the merits of different luxury car brands. I mostly listened, smiling, nodding, feeling a bit like a spectator at a foreign film. At one point, Mrs. Gibson's sister, a woman named Carol with a sharp, bird-like face, turned to Alex. "Alex, your mother is just so sweet," she said, her tone dripping with a condescension so thick you could cut it with a butter knife. "It must be wonderful for her to see you doing so well." I felt my cheeks flush. It was the kind of comment that sounds like a compliment but feels like a judgment. Before I could formulate a response, Alex jumped in with a smooth, practiced laugh. "She's the best," he said, raising his glass in my general direction. It felt perfunctory, a box being ticked. As the main course was cleared, Sarah and her mother got up to go speak with the wedding planner, who had just arrived. Alex's chair was now next to his future father-in-law. Mr. Gibson leaned in, lowering his voice slightly, but not enough that I couldn't hear every single devastating word. "It's a big gesture, Alex," Mr. Gibson said, swirling the red wine in his glass. Helen paying for this dinner, the honeymoon. It's a lot for her, I imagine. I held my breath, my fork hovering over my dessert. I expected Alex to defend me, to say something about my hard work or my love for him. I expected him to tell his father-in-law that my contribution, no matter the size, came from the heart. Instead, Alex let out a short, uncomfortable laugh. He shifted in his seat, leaning closer to Mr. Red Gibson, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, a voice he thought I couldn't hear. "Well, you know how it is," he said, a dismissive wave of his hand. "She gets to feel involved, it's important to her." He paused, and then delivered the blow that would shatter my world. "Honestly, don't worry about it. She's not real family, not like you guys are about to be. She's just here. It's more of an obligation, you know." The words didn't register at first. They floated in the air for a moment, disconnected from reality. Not real family. An obligation. The clatter of silverware, the murmur of conversations, the soft music from the speakers, it all faded into a deafening roar in my ears. It felt like the floor had dropped out from under me, leaving me in a free fall. I looked at my son, the boy whose scraped knees I had kissed, whose fevers I had nursed, whose dreams I had funded with the very marrow of my bones. I saw his face, animated and eager as he sought the approval of this wealthy, powerful man. And in that moment, I saw him not as my son, but as a stranger. A stranger who had just taken my lifetime of love and sacrifice and tossed it aside like a piece of trash to impress his new in-laws. My heart didn't just break, it atomized. The pain was physical, a white-hot poker searing through my chest. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands, resting in my lap, began to tremble. I wanted to stand up and scream. I wanted to ask him how he could be so cruel, so dismissive, so utterly ungrateful. I wanted to grab him by his expensive suit jacket and shake him until the boy I remembered came back. But I did none of those things. Years of swallowing my own needs, of presenting a calm exterior while my world was in turmoil, took over. My face, which had frozen in a mask of shock, slowly, mechanically, rearranged itself. I felt the corners of my mouth lift into a smile. It was a strange, hollow thing, a ghost of an expression, but from the outside, it probably looked perfectly normal. Sweet, even. I picked up my water glass, my hand miraculously steady, and took a small measured sip. Alex and Mr. Gibson had already moved on to another topic, laughing about a golf game. They were oblivious, they hadn't noticed the precise moment they had ripped my soul out. I sat there, a polite smile fixed on my face, an island of silent screaming agony in a sea of celebration. I was a ghost at the feast, his ghost. He was right. I wasn't family, I was just an obligation. A walking, breathing bank account he could dismiss when it was convenient. The warmth of the room felt like a bitter mockery. The beautiful flowers, the twinkling lights, the gourmet food, it all tasted like ashes in my mouth. And in the cold, clear, devastating silence of my shattered heart, a new steely resolve began to form. They thought I would just swallow this humiliation. They had no idea what a woman with nothing left to lose was capable of. The drive home from the restaurant was a blur. The familiar streets of Columbus passed by my car window, like scenes from a movie I wasn't watching. My mind was a relentless loop, replaying Alex's words, his tone, the casual flick of his wrist as he dismissed my entire existence. Not real family, an obligation. Each repetition was a fresh stab of betrayal. When I finally pulled into the driveway of my small, quiet house, the house that had always felt like a sanctuary, a home base for our little family of two, it suddenly felt alien and empty. The silence inside was suffocating. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark of my living room, wrapped in an old Afghan my own mother had made me, and let the full weight of the situation crush me. For the first time, I allowed myself to see the past, not through the rosy filter of maternal love, but through the harsh, fluorescent light of reality. I saw a lifetime of one-sided sacrifice. I remembered the Christmases I worked double shifts so he could have the latest video game console, only for him to barely look up from the screen to thank me. I remembered the parent-teacher conferences I'd begged my boss to let me attend, arriving late and breathless, while he seemed more embarrassed by my waitress uniform than grateful for my presence. I remembered draining my savings for his college, a decision I'd never once regretted until now. All these years I had told myself these were the necessary sacrifices of a loving mother. I had constructed a narrative in which I was the silent, noble hero in his story. But sitting there in the pre-dawn gloom, I was forced to confront a more painful truth. I had enabled him, I had taught him that my resources, my time, my love, were endlessly renewable commodities, available on demand, with no expectation of reciprocity or even basic respect. He didn't see my sacrifice, he only saw his entitlement. He had climbed a ladder I had built, and from the top he had looked down and decided he was ashamed of the ladder itself. The pain was a physical entity, a leaden weight in my gut. But as the sun began to cast a pale grey light through the window, the pain began to cool and harden into something else. It wasn't anger, not the hot, explosive kind. It was something colder, clearer. It was resolve. It was the sudden, stark realization that my self-worth could not be contingent on his approval. I had spent a lifetime building his future. It was time to salvage my own dignity. The decision, when it came, felt less like a choice and more like an inevitability. It wasn't about revenge. Revenge was messy and emotional. This was about balance. It was about drawing a line in the sand that he had so carelessly erased. It was about teaching a lesson that clearly a lifetime of love had failed to impart. At precisely 9 a.m., I picked up the phone. My hand was steady as I dialed the number for the high-end travel agency I had booked the honeymoon through. A cheerful voice answered on the other end. "Good morning, Prestige Travel. This is Brenda speaking. How can I help you?" "Good morning, Brenda," I said, my voice even and calm. "My name is Helen Miller. I'm calling about a booking under the names Alex Miller and Sarah Gibson. It's a honeymoon package to Bora Bora, booking reference 74B219. I could hear the clacking of a keyboard. "Ah, yes, Mrs. Miller, I have it right here. The bungalows at the St. Regis. A truly spectacular choice. Is there something I can help you with? A change of dates, perhaps?" "No," I said, taking a slow, deep breath. "I need to cancel the trip." There was a pause on the other end. "Cancel, ma'am. The entire trip?" "Yes, the entire trip. Please cancel the flights, the accommodations, all of it." "Ma'am, of course, I can do that, but I must inform you that according to the terms, a cancellation at this stage will result in a significant penalty. You would forfeit the initial deposit and a percentage of the total cost." "I understand," I said. "How much will be refunded to my card?" More clacking. Brenda sounded uncomfortable. "Let me see. After the cancellation fees from the airline and the resort, it looks like a refund of $6,250 would be credited back to your Visa." Losing nearly $14,000 should have felt like a punch to the gut. It was a staggering amount of money for me, a sum that represented years of careful saving. But strangely, I felt nothing but a profound sense of relief. It was the price of my freedom, the cost of my self-respect. "That's fine," I told Brenda. "Please proceed with the cancellation." "Very well, Mrs. Miller, I've processed it now. The booking is officially cancelled. The refund should appear on your statement within 5 to 7 business days. Is there anything else?" "No, Brenda, that's all. Thank you for your help." I hung up the phone and sat in the silence. There was no surge of triumph, no wicked glee, just a quiet, somber sense of finality. I had closed a door. I walked over to the mantelpiece, where a framed photo of Alex stood. It was from his college graduation. He was beaming, his arm slung around my shoulder, his future wide open. For years that picture had been my pride and joy. Now, it looked different. I saw the youthful confidence, but I also saw the seeds of the entitlement that had been on full display at the rehearsal dinner. With a heavy heart, I picked up the frame, opened the back, and slid the photo out. I didn't rip it. I just placed it face down in a drawer, closing it gently. The wedding was tomorrow. I would go, I would smile, I would play the part of the proud mother, but I would be doing it for myself, to honor the commitment I had made. The gift, however, had been returned to sender. The obligation had been nullified. The wedding day was a masterpiece of cognitive dissonance. The sun shone brightly on the immaculate grounds of the country club where the ceremony was held. Sarah was a vision in a white lace gown that probably cost more than my car, and Alex looked handsome and confident in his tailored tuxedo. I watched them exchange vows under a canopy of the very white roses I had paid for, their voices full of promise and hope. I smiled, I clapped at all the right moments, and I even managed to shed a single convincing tear. No one could have guessed that my heart felt like a hollow cavern. I was playing a role in a play I no longer wished to be a part of. During the reception, I was the perfect mother of the groom. I posed for photos. I danced with Alex for the mother-son dance, holding him at arm's length as we swayed to a song about unbreakable bonds, the irony a bitter pill on my tongue. He was cheerful, oblivious, completely absorbed in his new life. He would occasionally catch my eye and give me a bright, dismissive smile, the smile of someone who has gotten everything they've ever wanted. He had no idea what was coming. 2 days later, the storm broke. I was in my kitchen, watering my plants, when my phone rang. It was Alex. I let it go to voicemail, my heart beating a little faster. A minute later, it rang again. And again. On the fourth try, I sighed and answered, putting the phone on speaker as I continued my task. "Mom." Finally, his voice was frantic, laced with an unfamiliar panic. "Did you get an email from the travel agency? Some kind of mistake. Sarah just got one saying our honeymoon is cancelled. I've been on hold with them for an hour. It has to be a system error, right?" I finished watering a fern before I answered, my voice deliberately calm. "There's no mistake, Alex. I cancelled it." Silence, a thick, heavy silence stretched across the line. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head, the confusion warring with disbelief. "You? What? What do you mean you cancelled it? Why would you do that?" I decided it was no longer a gift I wished to give. I said simply, snipping a dead leaf from a geranium. "No longer wish to, Wom. What are you talking about? That was our wedding gift. We're supposed to leave tomorrow morning. Sarah is in the other room crying her eyes out." His voice was rising, cracking with indignation. "I'm sorry she's upset," I said, and I meant it. Sarah was collateral damage in this, but it couldn't be helped. "But this is between you and me. Between you and me. What is wrong with you? Why would you do this to us?" "It was a gift," he repeated, the word now sounding like an accusation. I put down my shears and finally gave him my full attention. "Yes, it was a gift, Alex. A very expensive one, from a woman you apparently don't consider to be real family." The line went dead quiet again, but this time it was a different kind of silence. It was the sound of a memory being dredged up, of a careless comment suddenly gaining monstrous weight. "What? What are you talking about?" he stammered, but the bravado was gone from his voice. "The rehearsal dinner," I said, my voice as cold and clear as ice. "Your conversation with Mr. Gibson. You thought I couldn't hear you, didn't you? Let me remind you of your own words. She's not real family. It's more of an obligation." I let the words hang in the air between us. "Well, Alex, consider the obligation fulfilled. I paid for the flowers and the dinner. The $20,000 honeymoon, however, was not part of the obligation. That was from your mother. But since she's not real family, she figured you and your real family could cover it." He was speechless. I could hear his shallow, shocked breaths. "Mom, I didn't mean it like that. I was just talking to him. Trying to, you know." "I know exactly what you were doing," I cut him off, my patience gone. "You were diminishing me to elevate yourself. You were treating my love and my life's work as a transaction you were embarrassed by. You cashed the checks, Alex, but you were ashamed of the bank. Well, the bank is closed. You can't do this." He finally exploded, a raw, childish fury in his voice. This is cruel. You're ruining our honeymoon, our wedding. No, Alex, I said, my voice softening now, but with sadness, not weakness. You ruined it. You ruined it when you decided that my love was something to be managed and dismissed. You're a grown man now, with a wife and a new, real family. I'm sure you'll all figure something out. You're very resourceful. He started to sputter, a mix of apologies and accusations, but I couldn't listen anymore. I love you, Alex. I will always love you. But I'm done being your doormat. Goodbye. I ended the call before he could reply. I sank into a kitchen chair, the phone clattering onto the table. The adrenaline drained away, leaving me feeling exhausted but light. A weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying for 30 years had been lifted. The road ahead would be difficult. Our relationship was fractured, perhaps irreparably. The son I had devoted my life to was now a man I barely recognized, and he would have to find his own way back to me, if he ever chose to. But for the first time in a long, long time, I wasn't thinking about his future. I was thinking about mine. I looked at the refund confirmation on my email. $6,250. It wasn't Bora Bora money, but it was a start. I thought about the places I'd never been, the things I'd never done, the parts of myself I had packed away while I was building a life for someone else. Maybe I'd take a trip. A small one, just for me. To the coast, perhaps. I could already feel the sea breeze on my face and the sun on my skin. It was the feeling of a new beginning. My own.